Yes, sir.
We'll call the Caroline County Board of Supervisors meeting to order, and I'd like to welcome everyone for coming out tonight. And first, I'd like to recognize the board members present this evening. We have Mr. Bobby Popowich from the Port Royal District, Mr. Wayne Akers from the Madison District. We have Mr. Jeff Seeley from the Bowling Green District. We have the Vice Chair, Mr. Floyd Thomas from the Mappin District, and I'm Maxie Roselle from the Reed Church District. And at this time, I would like to ask Supervisor Jeff Seeley if he would provide the invocation.
Thank you. Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, in these trying times in the country, the state, the localities, please give us the strength and the guidance and the wisdom to make the decisions needed that will help all that are affected and give us the light to help us see our way through these difficult and trying times. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, Mr. Seeley, and we'd like to start off if there are any opening board, excuse me, before that, the addendum. Today's meeting was after our snow day, so we do have that's Snowmageddon, but again, the agenda did change, so do need approval of the new agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve the amended agenda as submitted to the board.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Motion been made and properly second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now opening board comments, Mr. Popowich.
Yes, sir. I do have a couple. In light of a couple of weeks ago, I don't know how many. Is this not working? Is that right? Okay. A couple of weeks ago, as you may know, and I think Mr. Seeley and Mr. Akers and yourself, Mr. Roselle, went to the meeting at AP Hill. I wanted to put on public record that as a supervisor for the area, I wish I could have attended that, but unfortunately we had less than 24 hours notice about that meeting. I intend to be writing several letters to various members of the Army to correct this problem and see if we can get another meeting that is actually advertised and done properly. I don't believe that the testing that was done as a test to prove anything other than that they could get this done as quickly as possible. So I feel like we've been kind of shunned, and I'd hope that at the next meeting I'm going to be asking staff to also write a resolution kind of rebuking that action by the Army and DOD against us, which I think it's not necessarily personal, but it's certainly a rebuke of our authority here in the county as a governing body. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Popowich. Mr. Akers.
Thank you, Mr. Roselle. A couple of things. Number one, as you know, Aqua Virginia has another rate increase for the Lake Landor, Bridlewood, and Campbell's Creek subdivisions, and tomorrow is the big day of the State Cooperation Commission, where we go in and we make our arguments against this rate increase. We will be going down tomorrow. Lake Landor, I believe, has a pretty large contingent. I believe they indicated they have 40-some people going down to testify at this particular hearing. But I also want to publicly thank the people in Lake Landor. They sent me a really nice thank you card, and I'd like to read that and I'd like to say to the people in Lake Landor, I truly appreciate their thoughts. It says, it's addressed to me, and it says, we wish to thank you for your help and support in regard to Aqua Virginia's request to again increase sewer and water rates at Lake Landor, Campbell's Creek, and Bridlewood. Your efforts and hard work in Caroline County allows us to have a voice that otherwise would go unheard. Thank you, and it's signed by about 27, 28 different people in that community, and I want to say thank you to the people of Lake Landor. Also this evening, late, just before I left home, I had a call from former Congressman Pickett, and he indicated that he has heard that the school system has applied from for some funding from the federal government based on the size of the military base that we have here in Caroline. And I believe it's filed under Section 8002. He has indicated that it would be incumbent upon us, and Mr. Ashcraft, I'm going to ask you to follow with Mr. Killo, that we follow up with our congressman, both House of Representative members as well as both Senate members, to help the process along. We need to first find out where and how the filing was made, but then also to talk to each of those individuals, because former Congressman Pickett has indicated they have a great deal of influence on what happened. So I think we need to follow through on that. So if you would, I'd appreciate you doing that tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Akers. Mr. Seeley?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, just a few. I attended the school board member meeting on Sunday with a lot of folks that were there that were talking about school funding and how that'll affect the various components of the school, and assured them that the Board of Supervisors would do all we could to provide funding to the school system, and that it was incumbent upon the school system to look at the best ways to actually use those dollars that we provide. Many people were concerned. I'm hoping that many went away with a good understanding of what our role is, what the school board's role is, and I just want to say that we all have a Save the Chesapeake Bay Governor's School ribbon. I understand that that is one of the components of the school system that the school board is talking about cutting, and I think the people that were there understand that the school board needs to take a good hard look at what programs they do decide need to be cut and what programs they can keep and actually keep in the best interest of the students and of the community. I'm leveraging all of my support to my school board member, who I think did a great job of putting out all that information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley. Mr. Thomas?
I do have one, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize for not having a chance to discuss this with you before, but once we discuss it, I'm sure you'll see there'll be no problem, but I can't remember where I was or where I read that March 29th or March 30th will be the Honor Vietnam Veterans Day. It kind of commemorates the 35th anniversary of the fall of Saigon and the soldiers leaving, and those people who served during the Vietnam War came home 35 years ago to no fanfare at all, to a country that did not appreciate their service as much as it should have. And as somebody who had a draft card in that era, I understand what went on. And I'm asking the board that we declare March 30th Honor Vietnam Veterans Day, and possibly get together and make some sort of presentation. I'm sure there's at least, I don't think we can get them all, but I'm sure there's at least one Vietnam veteran we could identify from each district, and kind of make that symbolic gesture at maybe our March 23rd meeting. So if that's okay with the board, I'd like us to do that.
Good idea. We have, in fact, we had at least, I know at least 2 and maybe 3 residents that were killed in the Vietnam War.
And I'm sure that's true too. I went to high school with somebody who was killed in the war. So, thank you. That was
all right. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. And again, I guess one of the biggest things I'd like to say is just recently we didn't have our last meeting because of snow emergencies, and a lot of people in this county rose to the occasion to make sure that things moved along for the people of Caroline. And I just want to give a special thank you to all the first responders of those folks who in fire and rescue and law enforcement, the Sheriff's Department, the state police and conservation police, and all who've been involved in the work by VDOT and Dominion Power and the co-op and the citizens and social services and farmers with tractors. All these little things that took place, to get us going from a historic amount of snow. And it really paralyzed us in a great way. And we had, our first responders were the best. And I just want to commend all you guys for a great job that you have done in serving our county and our staff, you know, making things and trying to get, you know, all our offices open with the snow everywhere. And again, it was a real challenge. So I just want to thank everyone for your efforts. I know it was special. So we do appreciate that. Okay. First item, VDOT. Our,
Speaking of doing a good job.
yeah, speaking of doing a good job, here these guys. Charlie Stonko, good to see you this evening, sir.
Good evening. Couple of items from previous board meetings. The Watch for Children sign is up on Route 608 Lakewood Road. I think that was a request from a couple months back. The Moores Mill Road speed study kind of got caught up in the snow. They started doing the study like December 17th, and we know what happened on the 18th. So that hasn't been completed, but when they went down there to start the study, one thing that they noticed is that one of the existing 40-mile-per-hour signs was down, and that is now back up. So hopefully that will be of some benefit. Carmel Church project is still about 20% ahead of schedule despite the inclement weather that we've experienced. All of our costs for snow removal are not yet in, so we don't really know what the total is, but we do know that we spent way more than was budgeted and way more that was in reserve. So the balance of that's going to have to come out of our maintenance funds. So I would anticipate a very austere maintenance program for the rest of the fiscal year. When I come back on the 9th of next month, I should be in a little bit better position to tell you exactly what to expect in terms of maintenance. But I think that we'll be fortunate if we can keep the potholes patched and keep stone on the unpaved roads for the rest of the year. It's that time of year to talk about the 6-year plan again. And although we only anticipate about $90,000 per year in telefees to be able to put to the plan, I would like to set up a work session with you all for your first March meeting to talk about this.
Okay.
And we'll draft plans and get to you for review prior to that.
All right. Before the regular meeting, at 5 o'clock, 5:15.
It's 4:30 would give you a chance to have a break. It's 4:30, March 9th?
He said
March 9th, 4:30.
Charlie, you said we got $90,000, right?
Roughly 90,000. We don't know the exact allocation, but for planning purposes, about $90,000 per year. That is pure state money, so it can
Can we use that just to fix potholes?
hopefully won't be that bad, Mr. Seeley.
If we got $90,000, we can meet at 5:45. If we only have $90,000, we can meet at 5:45.
It won't take long.
It won't, really? I
That,
mean,
per year.
Per year. Per year.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was it 10 years ago per year?
That's
But anyway.
no, yeah. Any time that you want to do it will be fine with us. So. All right.
Okay, I think, can we do it before the next meeting? Ms. Thomas?
I don't see why not.
Okay. Okay, I think the majority says we can do that. 5 o'clock? 5 o'clock? All right. How's that, Mr. Stonkel?
That will be fine. Like I said, we'll get some plans down to Mr. Ashcraft for y'all to take a look at prior to that. That's all that I have this evening.
Okay, so we're at 90,000. Do you have any idea how much the snow cost? Or it will come out of that? Any guess?
No, as far as we know, all of the excess snow removal costs will be absorbed out of the maintenance budget. Won't come over into to the improvements.
Is there any chance we have any federal dollars to come back to help with that?
There are the two big snows. We are going to be applying for some reimbursement, but as you all know, that's a slow process, and you probably would not have them back before the fiscal year is over.
Okay. Mr. Popovich, you have questions, and I don't know if staff, we have a hard time hearing up this way. If there's any adjustments you guys can make, but up here we can't hear very well. You guys out there, can you hear? All right. Thanks. Okay, you can continue on. Just maybe want to talk a little louder for us. I'd appreciate it.
So that's all that I have,
All right.
Mr. Rozelle.
All right, Mr. Popovich, you have any questions, Mr. Dunkel?
No, not at this time.
Mr. Akers? Mr. Seeley?
I have but one question. Since I've gotten one person's asked me what we do is, who do we call if there's a huge pothole, and is there anything we can do about them?
If someone sees a pothole in Caroline County, please have them contact my office and let us know. I mean, we're out there patrolling, but we may not. There may be one that we miss. So
I understand. I was waiting for you to say I'm not sure there's any money, and I would have said I agree.
no, we're going to patch them.
But I got to say, the plowing, the snow plowing that this locality did was, by all estimations, really great. If you cross over into King George, it wasn't so good. So I just want to commend the crew that you had here because they did a really good job.
Thank you.
Better, Joey. Okay, Mr. Akers? No. All right, I'm sorry. Mr. Thomas?
Mrs. Dunkel, I just want to say, thanks for the work that your folks did. And it's hard to remember which snow was which, but one of the weekend snows, I had to be in North Carolina that Monday morning. And once I got out of my driveway, which wasn't easy, the rest of it was a piece of cake. So I really appreciate the work you guys do. And I know you don't get thank yous enough, so I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and the only thing I have, Mr. Stunkel, is at the intersection of 30 and 301, I just saw it yesterday. It's just bowing up where the big trucks are going through, and 19% of that traffic on that road are trucks, and it's starting to really cup up really bad right at the intersection.
That's a piece that we're looking to be able to overlay from just west of the intersection of 301 all the way down to the King William line. So
On 30.
on 30, yes.
Okay. All right. And again, your service to citizen has been great during all the snow, and we thank you. And please take that back to your folks.
I will.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Okay. Next, we had a continued discussion with the changes to the Fred transit system and the bus routes. So we asked the representatives from Fred if they could come and share with us. Just could you give us your name again, sir? And we appreciate that.
Good evening. My name is Arnold Levine. I handle policy and planning at Fredericksburg Regional Transit. You'll recall when we were here in January, basic view put forward by those citizens was that they preferred the old schedule. back to our offices that night, and the next morning we were not clear on what the specific and formal guidance from this board was to us. Our view is that you are our partners. The citizens of Caroline County are our customers, and we want to provide you the type of service you want. We offered 3 alternatives in a follow-up communication with Mr. Ashcraft. The 3 alternatives being to roll back the service to where it was before we made the changes, and that would be for both the C1 route and the C2 route. Another option was to continue running the new services for another couple of months and then take stock on how well it was performing, and then consider anew what changes we should make. And a third option was to curtail service on the C2 routes, which now run Tuesday and Thursday to Port Royal and to Dawn, and to take some of those hours and apply them to the C1, which has the most traffic, and try to adjust the C1 to fix the 2 main problems that were presented. The one being early morning service to Carmel Church, and the other being better service to and from the city of Fredericksburg. Those are the 3 options we put forward. Tonight, we would like to simply get as clear guidance as we can from the board on which of those 3, or perhaps another option, you would like us to pursue. If the decision is made that you'd like us to roll back to the old schedule, we can certainly do that. We would need to take some official steps, again, to publicize the fact that we were going to do that, to put notices out, to talk to the press, to rerun the schedules, to pull the signs in the poles out of Route 1 where we had placed them for the revised service. And looking at the calendar, if you were to make the decision tonight that that is the way you would like us to go, I'm thinking that March 15th would probably be the date, that's Monday, mid-March, that we could roll back the schedules, having met the requirements to give public notice. We certainly regret mucking up the works, if that's the right term to use for it. We followed the proper procedures for giving notice, and I would simply note that there is at least one lesson learned from that, which is that if we contemplate future changes in Caroline County, which frankly we're not inclined to take on our own initiative, having just gone through this process, but the main lesson we learned is that we cannot rely on the standard methods of giving public notice, that literally we need to put people on the buses out here with the before and after proposals and make sure everybody understands what's happening and make sure we understand what the implications of that would be. With that, I'm open to any and all questions you might have, and hopefully this evening we can go back with clear guidance as to how you would like us to proceed.
Okay, so basically what I'm hearing, if there are changes that we're ready to make today, the earliest you could do that would be March 15th. But I guess, you know, is it the pleasure of the board that we change from what it is today back to what it was?
Yeah.
Mr. Thomas?
That's
Mr.
really,
Vice Chairman?
Ms. Levine, let me say, first of all, thank you for working with us on this particular issue. At least 2 of us have learned from this, and I'm one of those 2, and I make a lot of decisions here, and I kind of turn those into reversible decisions and irreversible decisions. So this is one that we can reverse. Absolutely. And it's not really as traumatic as we thought originally, but I have a large contingent of constituents out in the audience now. I think you saw some of them before, and some of the ones that were here last time are not here, so it's a lot more people. A lot of folks have called me, and really, I got to get those folks to work. And that's what this is really all about. So they have to get to Carmel Church. They work at the truck stop there or some of the fast food places there. That's the big key. And there are some folks that go to Fredericksburg for whatever reason. They basically, without confusing anything, they need to go back to the old schedule the way it was. And I want to make sure we're clear, because I asked Mr. Ashcraft to call you yesterday while I was out of town, but we've got to go back to the old schedule, because if those people get in trouble at their job, I don't have any money to take care of them. So I got to keep Caroline working, and I appreciate your help in doing that. And I don't think any other board member had as many calls as I did, but I'm right in the middle of the Fred talk, and the Fred route, and I'm right in the middle of the county. So if you could help by going back to the old schedule, we would appreciate that. And I'm sure all of those folks that ride the bus would be happy to help develop a new schedule if you'd like to look at one in July. Okay?
Well, we're always happy to get input from our riders as to how we might improve the schedule, always within the budget framework that you give us to work with. So then may I take it that the board is of a view that we should go back to the old schedule?
If you'd like us to make an official motion to do that, I will move that the
I
board
would. That makes our job easier.
I will move that the board request of the Fred bus that they revert to the previous schedule that was in existence, we'll say last year.
Prior
Is that good
to
enough?
January 18th of this year.
Second.
Okay. So we've got a motion, we've got a second. Okay.
Okay, motion made and properly second that we proceed to ask for it to go back to the previous route schedules.
January 17th route schedule.
January 17th
That was a Sunday and we didn't operate, so we
route schedule. Okay. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. That
Very good, done.
Thank you.
We'll start working on that immediately with the target effective date of March 15th.
we appreciate you doing that for us.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
again.
you. Okay, next item, we have the appointments and appointments from the Industrial Development Authority. Mr. Parton, did we hear from those folks on those appointments? Mr. Ratcliffe and Mr. Stoddard?
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm.
Ms. Popowich?
Yes, Mr. Stoddard's thing is up, but we're going to go. I'd like to go ahead and reappoint Mr. Stoddard to the IDA.
Okay. Did anyone talk to Mr. Ratcliffe? I haven't.
Okay.
We haven't heard from him?
It's my understanding he does want to be reappointed.
Okay.
Okay.
Good news.
He does.
So both do.
Okay.
So motion would be in order?
I make a motion that we appoint Mr. Stoddard and Mr. Ratcliffe.
Second.
Motion made and proper second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next item, Board of Assessors, replacement for Mappin District.
Yeah, Mr. O'Neill said he couldn't serve, and I have contact with someone, but I haven't actually confirmed, and I don't want to do that again. So if we could wait till the next meeting, I'll be able to confirm for sure.
Okay, we have time to do that, Mr. Parton? Because I know my person was in an automobile crash and recovering, so it's borderline. Okay, so we'll bring those back up at the next meeting. Recreation Advisory Committee recommendation. I think we received that as an addendum. Let's see, what was the name from Dr. Kilo?
Michael Debo. Michael Debo.
Michael DeBolt?
Yes.
You got it.
All right, Michael DeBolt is a recommendation from the superintendent. Michael
He's not a
DeVault?
student.
No. No, he's the athletic director at the middle school.
I'm sorry?
Athletic director at the middle school.
Motion's in order if,
That's who the school board recommended.
They have, yes, sir. School administration.
it's on the
In that case, I would make that motion, Mr. Chair.
blue paper.
Second.
Okay, motion made, again, properly second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. All right, next we have the items 3, consent agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. If you go back to to your blue sheet again.
Come on,
Mr. Bo Horner has asked to be replaced on the Rec Advisory Committee. He just feels like he can just no longer serve. He's been on there quite a number of years, and probably just growing a little bit weary. So he's asked the board to consider a large appointment. You don't have to do that this evening, but I wanted to draw that to your attention.
Okay,
There's 2 at-large appointments, and he held one of them.
This guy.
So that, if nobody has anybody in mind at this moment, then we would go ahead and add it back to the March 9th agenda.
Bless you.
very good. Okay, still the consent agenda. Any items that will need to be pulled? I know interest in pulling J.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item J,
Okay,
and I think defer to a future meeting, actually.
okay, that's fine. So motion to approve excluding item J, and that will be brought up at a future meeting. Second to that motion.
Second.
All right, motion made, probably second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Okay, let's see what other items we can address. Who's going to present the towing ordinance this evening? The county attorney? Okay. Mr. Emerson, you ready to proceed with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is an ordinance, we're calling it a towing ordinance, and the genesis of it is a request from the sheriff's office to adopt a policy essentially regulating what's called police-requested towing in the county. In other words, towing of cars that are in accidents or blocking right-of-ways, that sort of thing. The Code of Virginia provides the authority to the Board of Supervisors and not to the Sheriff's Office to regulate towing, and it requires that it authorizes the Sheriff's Office to do the towing or to call and have towing done, but not to regulate it. That needs to be done by the Board of Supervisors of the county or whatever the governing body is, if it's a city, etc. And it has to be done by ordinance. So we have prepared a draft ordinance that's actually based on the Spotsylvania ordinance, which seemed fairly complete, for the consideration of the board. However, before you can adopt the ordinance or before you can enter into any agreement with towing companies to actually do towing, you are required under the code to appoint an advisory board, essentially an advisory committee, to review and comment on the proposed ordinance and to offer advice and recommendations on it to you. And that committee or board is required to be composed of at least one representative from local law enforcement. The local law enforcement office is the way the code puts it. One member from the towing operators who operate in the locality, and one member of the general public. Now you can have more than that, but it requires at least those 3 individuals and those 3 segments to be represented on the board. So that's basically where we are. I don't know if y'all have any questions. I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Okay, and for those here, the first reading of the proposed amendment for the Carolina County Code to create a towing ordinance. The first reading is the first time that the board sees it, and it just gives us the opportunity to ask questions of the proposed ordinance. And after we look at it for this first time, after this, it would then go for a second reading. And it's kind of where we are with this particular amendment to the county code. Board members, do you have questions of the attorney, or I see Major Mosier is here. If you'd like to speak.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we had previously foreseen this ordinance having to be taken in effect in the near future. We met with all the wrecker companies in Caroline, and Mark Giles was pretty much the person that everybody decided that if the board chose to pick someone as the operator to be as the part of the advisory group, and we would hope that he would be considered by this board as that person. And for the sheriff's office as a law enforcement officer, Lieutenant Joe Crowder would be the person that we would hope the board would choose for that, and the citizen would be obviously whoever y'all felt would be appropriate to be on the board to advise you guys on the actual ordinance. So we just want to make those recommendations, and the sooner we get that done, the faster we can move on with the actual ordinance.
Okay. All right, any questions of Mr. Emerson or Major Mosier on the board, or points on the ordinance? And I guess, why are we here? I mean, did something change in the state law and the new laws for the tow operators to go by?
Yes, sir, and that's exactly why we're here. There was a change in the law, and that's what the county attorney has reviewed and came up with his decision about the interpretation of the law.
Okay. All right. So I know the towing business has been regulated more within the state.
Yes, sir, that's
and
correct.
this is part of that.
Yes, sir.
It came from the state.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Emerson, sorry.
Ms. Poppins?
Yes, part of this amendment requires us to appoint folks from various points of view on this to a special board or commission. The question I had is that I do have somebody in our county, especially in my district. That person doesn't actually live here in the county, but they own their business here in the county. Would that person be allowed to, as part of this, be allowed to be part of that commission?
Yes, I don't think they have to be a resident.
Okay.
The language of the statute's not that specific.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Akers?
You indicated that the Major indicated, and you shook your head that you were in agreement, that there was a change in legislation. My question is, what is the change that is now requiring us to have a towing ordinance, or that it's advisable to have a towing ordinance, and when did this change come about?
I'm not sure that there's actually been a change. I honestly don't. We didn't research whether there has been a change in the state code. We simply looked at the state code for the rules that are applicable to regulate towing companies, and what is called in the code police requested towing, which would be whenever a law enforcement individual calls a towing company and essentially requests towing services. If those calls, if that is to be regulated, in other words, if you are going to set fees, if you're going to create a list of acceptable folks that have a process where they rotate along as to which company is called at what time, if you are going to regulate that process, that can only be done through an ordinance, and the ordinance has to be adopted by the Board of Supervisors. It can't be done by the sheriff's office. Frankly, there's a little bit of a gap in the code, it seems to me, because it clearly authorizes the sheriff to tow vehicles in certain situations. And then it just as clearly doesn't authorize the sheriff's office to adopt regulations as to who can tow and how and what they can charge and that sort of thing. So if there is a desire to do that, then it has to be done, again, by an ordinance that's been adopted by the Board of Supervisors. And there is this equally unusual provision, I think, that requires you to appoint an advisory board of your choosing, as long as it represents those three separate interest groups, so to speak, before adopting the ordinance or before entering into an actual agreement with a towing company that you will come and do towing for us and you'll be able to charge X number of dollars.
Okay. Make sure I'm understanding what you're wanting to do here. So what would happen is the fact that this commission, 3 members or more, would then determine which towing operators that the law enforcement could call and the price that they would charge for towing?
No, sir, I'm sorry. That would be done by either by the board in the ordinance or authorization in the ordinance given to the sheriff's office to actually adopt a policy, a more specific policy that sets some of those things. What the advisory board does is similar to what the planning commission does. It would simply provide advice to the Board of Supervisors on the language of the ordinance that the Board of Supervisors would adopt.
I know I've read recently, well, it's been a couple of months, 3 or 4 months ago, you know, they had this, it may have been 6 months ago, in Fredericksburg. And I don't know how we get into the business of trying to determine what is an equitable and fair charge for a towing company to charge to tow vehicles. I don't know that any of us on this board have towing experience and know what it's what a good charge. We've been towed, but I mean as far as towing. But I'm not convinced about the purpose of this ordinance. And it could be, I am not one to want to put ordinances on the book that we're not able to enforce and not able to understand the purpose. And at this point, I haven't been able to understand the purpose of this ordinance.
Yes, sir, Mr. Akers. And if I may, Mr. Emerson.
Sure.
It is our understanding if we do not have this ordinance in place, then we can't regulate the conditions on who we are to put on the list as far as response to an accident scene. So let's say that you have 10 companies in Stafford and they want to be on Caroline County's towing list. We can't deny them access to our towing list, and we have to use the individuals out of Stafford as part of a rotation process.
Have we had that problem in the past?
We are not experiencing it this time, but we have talked with other jurisdictions, and they are having this problem. As far as regulating the amount of time that it takes for the record company to get there, that would be one of the conditions that would be set out in the ordinance, which could affect who we use and who we utilize to tow these vehicles. Right. If we do not have this ordinance in place, and then we deny someone to be on our list, we could be up for civil litigation.
Do you have to use them because they're on the list? I mean, do you have to go down the list and the first incident you have, you call the first one, then the second, and third?
If you don't have an ordinance to regulate that, then we'll have to agree to let them participate in our towing procedures.
How do you differ?
So
I'm not. Unfortunately, you haven't convinced me.
I understand
at this point that this is something that is a burning issue in Caroline County. To implement an ordinance that's going to again set the pricing and set who we use.
As far as the pricing,
the more we talk about it, you know, the second reading, I may get more information that will better explain to me the purpose of this process. But at this point, I'm just not convinced.
Sure. Mr. Seeley?
I'm going to echo Mr. Akers' comments and say that I'd like to talk to some of my constituents that actually have towing businesses and